Welcome everybody. This is going to be an instructional video kind of showing my mixing and mastering process when it goes to making and producing beats. Basically going to be going over how I kind of EQ stuff and how I make the drums kind of punch a little more and then the melodies kind of create them separated but blend well. So I'm going to give you a preview of this track first and then we're going to go from there. Okay, cool. So pretty much the driving force of this track is really that synthesizer, those chords being played, and then the 808 and kick drum, which just kind of slap really hard. And a lot of it has to do with the compression. But so let's break down the melodic section first. So I'm gonna go ahead and solo out all the instruments. So that first driving force is really this synth right here. That's kind of like that main part of the song. And what I did first was between all these tracks, I turned them all down slightly and then kind of leveled them out to where I felt that, each track had its own space but wasn't overpowering the other. And, I still had these chords being the dominant force. So what I did to these chords, this is before any plugins are on. And this is after. Very kind of subtle, but basically this first plugin called One Knob Pumper is basically what's called a sidechain compressor. And as you can see, it's illuminating, every quarter beat. So basically every time that illuminates, it kind of ducks the volume down of that synthesizer. And what that's doing is kind of creating a pumping feel and kind of adds a rhythmic element to it. So I'm going to go ahead and exaggerate it. You hear this a lot in electronic music, and it's called sidechaining. So as you can see, it's kind of ducking, but it's on beat, and it's kind of a rhythmic element. So that's what I added to that. And then after that, I added in some EQ. And basically, I'm cutting out all the low end, so anything below 130 hertz is getting cut out because it's bass, and we don't need bass on our chords. We're saving the bass for the actual 808 kick drum. So that's why we are cutting out the low end to just create more space for our 808. And then again, what I'm doing is boosting at 16K, which is kind of a mid-range boost to give it some more energy. So this is before. And then after. Very subtle, but it's just making it cut through the speakers a little bit better. And then finally is called Virtual Mix Rack from Slate Digital, and these are basically saturation plugins, these first two right here, which is adding harmonic elements to it. And then this right here, the FG2A, is a compressor. So as you can see, this needle will duck down. And this is really adding a lot of life and a lot of energy to the sound. This is before. And then after. Basically making the sound very consistent, and it's kind of almost squeezing it and bringing up the overall level, brightening it up and just adding a lot of character to that sound. And now next, we have some of these background sounds. So we'll start with these keys right here. So the only thing I really added on this was just an EQ to cut out some of the high frequencies and then cut out some of the lows to kind of make it breathe right in the middle, right in the mid-range. So if I take this EQ off, you can actually hear there's some distorted harmonics in kind of the upper region. Almost sounds like static in a way. And this EQ is kind of removing that, or at least turning it down a little bit. Make it sound almost more underwater sounding. And then, so on top of that sound, there's another. We have this, which is kind of like adding just kind of like an ambience to it. And it's basically the same chord progression as this keyboard, just layered to kind of give it some more depth. And basically what we're doing to this sound is, again, cutting out all the low end and then giving it a lot of boost to the high frequencies. So if I take it off, it sounds kind of dark, too dark. So I wanted to brighten it up. Adds a little bit more air to it. And then that layered with the keys really sounds amazing. And then, so this sound right here, these are just some kind of background bells, which kind of add to that overall depth and texture. So when I take it out, it really kind of feels like there's something missing. So what I added to this, well, rather, this is how it sounded before the plugins. Right? And then, so this is a cool plugin called Grosbeat, and this is basically time manipulation, and it makes it sound kind of glitchy. So if I turn it on, it kind of adds like it's like a reverse effect almost, and then a repeat. And then after that, I'm EQing it some more, basically taking out the low end again. And this is basically, you know, common denominator with most of my sounds is I take out the low end just to give the drums more space, and then I'm adding some more frequencies at the higher end to kind of brighten it up. And basically the whole idea with, you know, mixing your sounds together, the melodic and harmonic elements, is you want to really create a pocket for each area. So like if you notice, most of these EQ boosts are not in the same area for each sound because you want to give each sound its own pocket and room to breathe. So we also had drums. Okay, so the basic driving force for the drums really comes from the kick and the 808. So the kick drum is, you know, that short punchy sound, and the 808's that deep bass that you hear. And the deep bass sound is really not much being done to it. I just put on this plugin called R-Bass, and this is basically just adding some more low end to it. So this is before and after. So definitely like a lot more thump and like, you know, rumble to it. And then the kick drum, I'm not actually doing much to the kick drum except for leveling it out. And the idea with your kick drum and 808 is you want to really pick great sound selections from the start. You know, you want to pick a great kick drum that sounds great with the 808, because sometimes you pick a kick and an 808 and they just don't blend together. So that's really the key, is finding two that mesh. And then, so I'm basically routing all my drums to a drum submix. And what I mean by this is, if you look over here, when I click all these different drum sounds, you can see at the bottom there's a cable that's basically being run from each one of these tracks, and then it feeds into this channel called drum submix. So basically this is compressing all my drums, and what that does is, by compressing all the drums, you're essentially making them punch and hit a lot harder in the mix. It's a very subtle difference when I was turning it on and off, but it makes all the difference, and it makes that kick just slap in the mix and makes everything just bounce way better. And then for the last harmonic and melodic area of the song was this kind of breakdown area right here. So it's this area right here. So basically the driving force for this little breakdown is this sound right here. So as you can see, again, cutting out the low end on the EQ and boosting a lot of high end, starting at 4.5. And this is kind of just bringing that sound very much up front and giving it a lot more energy. And so this is without that EQ. And then with. You can see it adds a lot more buzz to it, a lot more high end, and just gives it more energy. And then so that sound is being layered with another piano sound, which is this one right here. And then this sound as well. So this one's very ambient, and then I kind of just have it tucked down, EQ'd out a little bit of low end, not much, just kind of adding background. And then so these three sounds together. And so yeah, that's basically it for that little section. And then, you know, here and there we have little fills, sound effects such as these right here. That's just kind of to like transition each little different area. But basically, you know, the whole idea is that you want to get good sound selection from the start. Pick good sounds that sound good together and blend, so that makes the mixing process much easier. But basically the whole idea of mixing these sounds is that you want to create kind of a pocket for each individual sound, boost individual frequencies that sound good, and then remove frequencies that sound bad, and just kind of, you know, making sure everything blends together and you're not crushing the track too much. But yeah, hopefully you guys liked this video, and I'm going to play this song one more time, and thank you for watching.
I love you, Arlo.